took my gear.
Chapter 2 begins with Leon escaping confinement and needing to find his confiscated equipment. This section is designed to teach the player about stealth kills and basic knife combat. It provides several kitchen knives for this purpose. However, I don't want to expend any durability on those spare knives. I need them to remain in peak condition for a later encounter, so I'll be taking an unorthodox approach to this area. There are 2 enemies that I want to get rid of and 2 bear traps in the environment. With some careful movement and positioning, I'll be able to lure both of those enemies into each trap, which will let me instantly kill them with melee attacks. It might seem like a pointless action to be taking out these rats, but doing so is part of what is called a merchant request. I'll elaborate more on that when I meet the merchant. This third enemy is non-threatening. He won't follow me into the next room, and he'll be too slow to attack when I'm on the way back. No need to bother with fighting him. It's important to move quickly here. The door I open closes fast, so taking the shortest line to that room is necessary. After getting my equipment back, I take a moment to combine some of my items and treasures, as I'll be able to sell them soon.
I'll be taking these back. Who's that?
Let's do some business then, eh? Welcome.
This is the merchant, and he is going to be a huge help. He will offer upgrades to the knife that will make it deal more damage and last longer before breaking. He can also repair the knife at any time. He'll also buy any unneeded items I have off of me. I start by selling my treasures and everything else I don't need so I can build up money to invest in upgrades. I choose to max out durability first since that is a more pressing need right now than power is. I still have enough left over to get in at least one upgrade to power. On the topic of merchant requests, those are side quests that, when completed, award the player with spinels. Spinels are a special currency that can be traded to the merchant for additional treasures and items. For this enemy, I hug the right wall as I approach her and mash the knife prompt when I get close enough to perform a stealth kill. This is a very finicky trick. I haven't been able to make it consistent. It's still an efficient way to get rid of her though. This is the infamous Dynamite Valley, and why it's called that will be made clear shortly. It's not a friendly place for knife only. I've come up with a highly unusual strategy that will let me take out the majority of the enemies. I start by waiting for the enemy on the bridge to turn his back to me. I want to stay undetected while I make my way into a house. The door is locked, so I have to enter through the window. Once there, I wait for the same enemy to turn back around and walk some distance. This will let me travel as far as I can up the path before I inevitably get detected. Total stealth isn't possible here, so I can't avoid getting into a skirmish. Running up the hill only to immediately jump back down must seem like a questionable action, but the purpose of going up there was to spawn additional enemies. I don't want to run into them later, and I want to increase the chances that they will all get killed during the execution of my strategy. The plan is to wait inside the house and do what I can to prevent the enemies from getting inside, all while several dynamite enemies continue to throw dynamite at the window. Because I'm keeping the lock on the door, the window is the only way for the enemies to get inside. So I'm creating a choke point here where they all have a great likelihood of getting blown up, and there's also a chance for them to fall off the ledge if they get pushed back. When some enemies do get inside, I just do my best to take them out with stabs, parries, melee, and knife prompts if necessary. Enemies that are carrying weapons are the easiest to deal with, but unarmed enemies are more dangerous because I can't parry their grabs. Depending on the type of grab animation they use, it is possible to crouch under it, but there is one that can't be avoided by crouching, and in the confined space of this house, it would be unavoidable without escaping through the door and compromising the integrity of this choke point. Truth be told, this is not a consistent strategy and not something I recommend. I did it just to show that it's possible to take a more aggressive approach to this area. Before the video ends, I'll show off some bonus footage depicting a better strategy. Eventually, the enemies stop coming and the dynamite enemies seem to have blown themselves up. This is a stroke of luck as usually one of them survives. With the path clear, I'm going to head back to the upper route and take care of business there. The two enemies here are rather passive in that they won't leave their positions, they're hesitant to attack me directly, and instead prefer to throw projectiles. As such, I decide to go on the offensive and run in to stab them manually. This is risky since they can still attack me, but it's unlikely. It's important to note how the dynamite enemy wasn't holding any dynamite when I was stabbing him. If he was holding dynamite, then I run the risk of getting blown up. Even if I aim away from the dynamite, and even if the dynamite wasn't lit, it can still explode because of my attacks. Very frustrating when it happens. Turning this wheel will open the gate that will let me escape from this area. That's one of the two things I need to accomplish here. The other is finding the hexagonal emblem, which is needed to open a locked gate back where the merchant was. A few more enemies have spawned, so I just run back to my spot inside the house and try to get them through the window. The knife can be used to prevent enemies from mutating. It costs a lot of knife durability, but it's better to spend that than it is to let the enemy transform and having to fight them. Enemies that are killed through knife prompts will never transform, and that's a mechanic I'll get a lot of use out of throughout the whole run. Right here is an example of an enemy that is unaware of Leon's presence, yet is killed by a combat execution instead of a stealth kill. This is because other enemies have detected Leon, so stealth kills aren't currently available. It's important to be able to recognize this distinction since more durability will be consumed. This is the emblem I need to proceed, and with the gate open, I can finally get out of here. Some more enemies have spawned and there's a dynamite thrower I need to be careful of. I don't want to take any more risks with trying to fight them, so I'm just going to make a run for the exit. That's the Dynamite Valley. I made it look like a reasonably controllable encounter, but it's really far more chaotic than the footage implies. This is where the pain of not being able to shoot starts to sink in. I'm deprived of quite a few options that would make this sequence much more tolerable. The amount of things that can go wrong is innumerable due to the abundance of enemies and the dynamite. Since I insisted on using a less than ideal strategy, it took me a while to get a successful attempt. I did mention that I'll be showing a better strategy before the video ends. I use the word better loosely because it's still volatile and even a little random. but it's a significantly faster strategy, so constantly retrying it isn't as draining. Anyway, when I get back to the merchant, I make sure to repair my knife since it's close to breaking. I also put a save down since I don't want to risk repeating that last section again. The rest of the chapter is miles easier, but I still want to be safe. The next area has only a few enemies that I'll be able to take out easily with stealth kills. There are also a good number of bear traps that I can take advantage of too for some more enemies coming up. They'll be especially useful for one in particular that would ordinarily be very dangerous. This enemy was being unusually aggressive. She normally isn't after me this quickly, so I end up having to parry her. I then try to use the bear trap against her. She demonstrates how the enemies can sidestep bear traps while walking to avoid them. I'm insistent on getting her in this trap though, so she eventually falls for it when she tries to attack me. That sidestep they can do will always dodge bear traps even if they still touch the trap while doing so. I've had many moments where I was practically playing Ring Around the Rosie with the enemies as I tried to get them into bear traps. It can get really silly. Here, I walk slowly to cross an invisible line on the map that spawns 2 additional enemies. I do that so I don't have to deal with them in addition to the enemy at the top of the stairs. There are still plenty of bear traps in the environment to make use of, so I'll be doing just that. This enemy with a hatchet is an annoying one. He really loves throwing them, which can make getting him into a bear trap a lengthy process. To prevent him from throwing, I keep within a specific distance of him so that he follows me as I lead him to the trap. Eventually, he'll charge in for an attack and run right into it. Afterwards, I get to deal with Dr. Salvador. With no enemies supporting him and more traps to utilize, taking him out is simple. He'll take a good chunk of damage from running into the bomb. Then it's just a matter of luring him into the bear traps. Using a melee attack on him while he's ensnared won't instantly kill him like it would normal enemies. Instead, I'll use the knife prompt I'm given to deal a lot of damage. The bomb damage and 2 knife prompts are all it takes to kill Salvador here. This is true even if the knife didn't have any power upgrades. It costs a bit of durability, but I think it's worth it. No real reason to kill this enemy in the bathroom. I just like to since it's an easy stealth kill. Regardless of whether he's alive or not, he will always respawn as a transformed enemy type once the key item is picked up.
Their neighbors.
This is the Desnucado mutation. These don't have attacks I can parry. All it can do is grab. I lure it outside of the house and just go for stabs on the head. It actually can't attack me while it's outside because that's beyond the designated line of aggression this enemy has on the map. That sounds complicated, but to put it in simpler terms, it's part of a strategy called leashing. Leashing is something that I'll be using a lot in later chapters, so I'll explain more about it when I reach the encounters where it's relevant. That's going to close out Chapter 2. It's one of the shorter chapters in the game. The Dynamite Valley is the only cause for concern here. There's nothing else to worry about outside of that. I did say that there would be bonus footage, so let's see what the alternative strategy looks like for that sequence. When I get up here, I'm just going to jump down right away and make a run for it. There's an enemy who mostly tries to go for a grab that can easily be crouched under. I keep moving and head for the back window. It's ideal that the pitchfork enemy jumps down before the unarmed one, otherwise getting grabbed would be a risk. I execute the enemy by the ladder just so he won't possibly damage me as I try to climb the ladder. I'm also hoping for a good turnout with the dynamite. They are always a risk factor that's out of my control. At any moment I could get blown up if they get a lucky throw in. But once I get the hexagonal emblem, I'll have to figure out how to get to the other side of the map safely. I got very lucky that this enemy went for a punch instead of trying to grab me. He made me hesitate with which way to go since I couldn't tell if he was taking the bridge or not. The bridge is an extremely dangerous place to be because the dynamite can blow it up. If Leon is on the bridge when that happens, then it's game over. The upper path is just a mess. There are so many enemies and all I can do is hope for the best as I try to open the gate. The escape afterwards is especially tense. There is no point during any of this where I'm not at risk for taking damage, if not outright dying. Close calls are unavoidable with this strategy. I wouldn't call it consistent either. It might seem strange that I recommend this over what I demonstrated earlier since this is heavier on luck, but this is around only a minute and a half of time investment. It's not too bad of a prospect to keep re-rolling this strategy until it works. In comparison, my other strategy takes around 6 minutes, it still suffers some inconsistency and it requires a good amount of luck. So, mathematically speaking, I think it's much better to just keep trying the running strategy until it works. That's going to be it for Chapter 2. It's a little bit of a step up in difficulty from Chapter 1 in the context of knife only, but it's still minor in the grand scheme of things. The real threats are yet to come. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video for Chapter 3. Take care.